Hello, Week to Warrior. This brings us to lesson 4. I think I stop numbering the lessons because the number of the lesson isn't really important. But lesson 4, examples of healthy traditional societies. And the purpose of this lesson is to help you understand healthy societies, unhealthy societies, what makes a society healthy, what makes a society unhealthy, and just see patterns and start to look and notice patterns. So, unhealthy society would be our society. It's a fairly good example of an unhealthy society, especially because it is a wealthy society. So our society is a society that should be healthy, but isn't healthy because we have fundamental issues with the way we understand ourselves, the way we understand health, the way we pursue health, the way we structure our lives, the way we structure our businesses, all of these things, the way we cook our food, the way we grow our food, the way we ship our food, the way we think about our food, the way we think about each other, the way all these things. So, healthy, let's say physically healthy societies would be most commonly found in typically traditional societies or tribal societies, generally speaking. Like people who have lived in some unbroken way for hundreds of years are much healthier, generally speaking, or thousands of years better still, thousands of years are healthier, generally speaking, than those who have not, simply because it's natural selection of lifestyle. The unhealthy lifestyles are probably just bred out. So when you see the Maasai of Africa who like eat pretty much exclusively meat, they eat like meat, drink blood, and milk, and that's like their diet, and they're very healthy. And you see other tribes in Africa where they eat largely starch and sweet potatoes, and you see like this diversity of diet. The Mongols eat primarily meat. Other places, especially in more tropical regions, they eat, not they're not all in tropical regions, they eat more starches and plant material, and a lot of people eat a mix of both. Some people have trouble digesting red meat but have no trouble digesting fish. Other people have no trouble digesting fish but don't get as much nutrients from it. So there's a lot of like, the real like thing I want to give you though is basically this idea of these traditional societies, these people who have lived in this way for hundreds, thousands of years. And what really happens is they develop a way of eating and being that is in harmony with their genetics, at the very least, because they're clearly healthy. So what they're doing is a gene environment match, and that's good. So whenever we see a healthy society, we see a gene environment match. And usually what that looks like is, or pretty much always, I'll tell you the things you always see lots of movement. You always see development of healthy movement patterns from childhood. You always see lots of time outside, exposure to nature. You always see lots of foods in raw, minimally processed, or traditionally processed, because you have like fermenting and lots of different methods of like not even alcoholic fermenting, but just like lacto fermentation for like sauerkraut and like fermenting vegetables and fermenting meats and curing meats and salting meats and aging meats and like many like making blood sausage, like all these different, like people have been doing creative things with food for a long time. It's this idea of like only eating raw, unprocessed foods in their natural state being what people do is really silly because people have been making bone broth for thousands of years. And you look at these traditional societies, these healthy groups of people, like in Papua New Guinea before industrialization, and you see people eating foods that at the very least had correspondence with their biology, had harmony with their biology, had bacteria and enzymes that had harmony with their biology. They were living foods. Let's just say at least living foods, foods comprised closely of living materials with very little else in them that wasn't suitable for life. And eating this way, people were able to become very healthy, become very strong. And you just see like, look at like more traditional societies, look at tribal societies in Africa. They're much healthier than we are. Look at people who still eat in traditional ways, like just anyone who eats like a traditional society who eats like the way they eat for hundreds and thousands of years, and then you look at anytime they switch over to a Western diet, immediately illness, disease, obesity, heart disease, cancer, joint problems, digestive problems. And the reason for that is that like we eat like slave food, like kibble, like just like processed packaged garbage, like Cheerios, like Pop Tarts, Coca Cola. Like, what even is that stuff? You're just eating this stuff, and it's not even food, not even like remotely food. And then we wonder why it is that we're not healthy when we're not even eating things that have any correspondence with life. But we look at these traditional societies and we start to see differences. So it's like food, really big one. And Weston A. Price really studied that in detail. He studied how food in Britain, so like Britain, the diet in Britain around like 1920s, 1930s was associated with like dental overcrowding, narrow faces, um, dental formation issues, form issues in the formation of your face, issues in formation of skeletal structures. And these are all associated with like nutrient deficiencies and anti-nutrients and other nonsense that was present in abundance in the diet of England at the time, which I think was like mostly just like bread, probably moldy, tea, like preserved, whatever. Like, there's just very, very minimal diet fed to British peasants at the time, or by the poor class of Britain at the time, and it produced very, very poor health. And they even fed rats that diet, and they showed the rats were dying, and they fed them a diet that was corresponding with I think it was a diet of some Indian group, some group of people in India, and they found they got healthier though. But it was just the fact they were eating natural foods again, a more traditional society-based diet. But it's really just the natural foods or foods that are closer to nature. I don't even say closer to nature to mean like just taken off the ground, but closer to nature in the sense of like if I like take some like meat and I like even if I cook it up into a stew or something, it's still going to like it's still in like a kind of like a natural state. If I leave it out, like bacteria will eat it. If I ferment food, it has bacteria, and I mean it corresponds with life. Life eats it. So these all merge lessons 4 and 5 because the next lesson is going to be Western Price and Ponder's Cats. We'll just merge them because that's kind of how the flow is going. So basically, Pottinger's Cats is a study done on cats by this guy, Henry Pottinger, who found that cats who were fed raw milk, raw meat were very healthy, whereas cats fed like pasteurized like milk, thoroughly, completely cooked through meat were deteriorate over time. They would just degenerate as like a result of the either the absence of enzymes in their food, the absence of nutrients that are only present in the food when raw, or due to the lack of correspondence between what they were eating and their genetics. But either way, this diet produced in them really, really poor health symptoms. But the way it happened was interesting. So the first generation have been eating healthy cat food their whole life, like but just normal cats. And you should keep this in mind if you have pets and you're feeding them kibble, because you'll see this happen. So the first generation been healthy, having healthy, just eating healthy, natural diet for cats. Take them in, feed them the cooked food, and they were kind of fine. But I think actually the first generation was fine throughout this entire life. The second generation developed health problems in old age, and then the third generation had health problems their entire life, and then had trouble creating a fourth generation. If there even were fourth generational offspring, they were infertile, didn't survive very long, and lots of issues. And he demonstrated through this the multi generational impact of nutrient deficiency and of insufficient diet. And you see this with traditional societies. Again, typically the first generation that adopts the diet is generally fine, and the second generation is like more obese later in life, and then the third generation is just really obese. I mean, you see this with like kids, for instance. It's like very common how this happens. Like, so you have parents who eat unhealthy their whole life, but their parents ate healthy, so they eat unhealthy their whole life, but they kind of have healthy habits from their parents. Maybe they were active when they were younger. Their parents gave them good gut microbiome, good nutrients from the mother and from breastfeeding, and then they go their whole life and they kind of just become unhealthy in middle age because of their unhealthy lifestyle. And they have kids, then their kids, they just feed them the same food that they eat. So their kids have no energy as children, have very low energy, and then their kids are like really fat. And it's like And then, I don't know, like the reproduction rate is going down dramatically, so we're kind of seeing that playing out. But um just looking at these different societies is really going to give you the best perspective on what produces health and what produces sickness. Because our society is clearly producing almost nothing but sickness, but other societies don't necessarily produce, at least physically, not that they're perfect in every way, but I'm sure you find plenty of problems in tribal societies. But by and large, they don't have the health issues we do. Like, not nearly the health issues we do, not even close. It's like they're like a different species. Like, if you were to look at the health problems we have and the health problems tribal and traditional societies have, you would basically conclude that we're different species because I mean, some of us, like at 50, are just like, yeah, well, at 50 years old, your penis falls off and you can't have sex anymore, and your testosterone goes to zero, and your balls shrivel up like raisins, and your nipples start leaking weird pasty fluid that's green and smells like you're dying. But that's just because you're 50, man. You got to take all the drugs and not kick the bucket. And it's like, these like tribal people at 50s, like right, like running like 50 miles, like a deer on their back, and they're just like, God is good, my brother. We run and eat the meat of the earth, like clearly there's something going on here, and that's what I want to draw your attention to. So on that note, I wrap up.